Well, hi everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Feeling Smarter. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Tim Miller. G'day, Tim. How are you?
Yeah, going pretty well, Aaron. How are you doing?
Not too bad, thank you. Well,
Good.
this is our final Feeling Smarter edition as part of our upcoming SMSF Death Benefits Masterclass. And this is an area that, not that we overlook, but it's a real important part of this upcoming event where we'll explore the different tax decisions that need to be made, and those tax decisions happen at different levels. So in that instance, we're talking about considerations within the fund, and then considerations that impact the member and or those beneficiaries. So Tim, what are some of the first things that come to mind when we think about tax and the impact of tax when a member passes away?
Yeah, look, I think the first, if I'm being slightly mischievous, I think the first thing that we often talk about here is that there's a concept that there's no death benefits tax uh, in Australia, but we're all pretty well aware that there is. Sometimes it goes by the name of capital gains tax, but also we have PAYG obligations in some instances as well. So I think the first thing that comes to mind is, what is the structure of the fund when a member passes away? Are they in pension, or are they in accumulation, or do they have a combination of pension and accumulation to determine the taxing point for fund before we then even start to look at the taxing point for the actual beneficiaries?
Yeah, so well, let's sort of start there then at the fund level, because that structure becomes really important. And if we look at an accumulation member, well then we're going to be in an environment where, as you touched on, CGT is going to be a consideration. We may even have members that are in a phase of life where they've got insurance, and again that throws out some deductions. And I know we've spoken about it on these Feeling Smarter editions before. And again, we'll explore these in the upcoming masterclass around future liability deductions and the like. But then equally, when we kind of flip over to the retirement phase, we'll then looking at the way in which the income tax laws work in respect to exemption, not only for where the pension may continue in a reversionary context, but also where the pension is non-reversionary, and a decision needs to be made around the payment of a final benefit or an interim and a final, or whether they're moving to back into the retirement phase as a death benefit pension too.
Yeah, and one a thing that always sort of piques my interest a little bit when we talk about that, particularly in that non-reversionary space, is that there is an obligation when you've got non-reversionary pensions to pay the death benefit as soon as practicable, right? And what we need to be clear on is that is as soon as practicable, not as soon as preferable. And there's a difference in, if we wait longer, is there benefits that we can get? Well, the reality is, do you need to wait longer? As in, do you have all the information available to you to make the benefit payment? And if you do, then you should be making the benefit payment, and then you get the associated tax benefits that go along with that. So, there's always delays in death benefits. It's just a given. They can take months, they can take years to pay out. And if that timing is genuine, then you're going to get the associated tax offsets, for want of a better term, deductions that you're entitled to. But you just need to be mindful that your first objective is to the beneficiaries of the deceased.
Yeah, and there's been a bit of talk about this in the first half of the year around the archaic nature of those death benefit regulations, and the way in which benefits can be paid. Because I referenced that kind of interim and final lump sum as a maximum, and we've got
Yep.
issues where, say, a pension's failed, and therefore you would automatically in a death benefit income stream have a failure of a pension if there's been 6 monthly payments that have been made as part of a reversionary income stream. So,
Yep.
and I know even within the industry fund environment, there's been a lot of sort of pushback to government to revisit those issues. So yeah, so tax at the fund level has a number of considerations there that you highlighted. Now, the other part, Tim, then, if we kind of look to the member level
Mm.
or beneficiary, this is where we get this next layer of tax and trying to understand the dependency nature of one or more beneficiaries here.
Yeah, and look, one of the things that you and I often will say, and I know I've been regurgitating it for years, is that in the vast majority of self-managed super funds, 2-member funds, there'll be 2 death benefits. You know, the first member pass away, and more often than not, that payment goes to the spouse, and so there's no real taxing issue there. But then the subsequent death benefit is often to what we consider a non-tax dependent, and that becomes the taxing point. And so therefore, you know, the definition of non-tax dependent becomes, you know, pretty critical. And the legislation, both tax and SIS, provides some really good guidance in regards to what's known, spouse, children, those sorts of things. But then when you start to delve into issues like interdependency and financial dependency, it's not as straightforward as, hey, I'm paying the school fees. I'm financially dependent, and we've got, and we will reference multiple private rulings that we've seen where the circumstances on face value look almost exactly the same, but the outcomes are different, based on just a couple of key different elements to each scenario. And so that can be the difference between a 15% tax liability and a 0% tax liability, which can be a lot.
Yeah, and that highlighting of the tax on the taxable component is something over the past couple of years has really got highlighted even further through the private ruling space around the member versus death benefit thing.
Yep.
So the fact that people are really wanting to draw down on benefits and try and take it out before there's that impost of tax, and
Yep.
the ATO appear now to be quite cemented in their views around the treatment for SMSF purposes versus what that might look like within an APRA regulated fund.
Yeah, and you know, and I can understand the position that the ATO have taken, and I think it's really one of clarity there to say the trustees of a self-managed super fund, in, let's say, 99.99% of cases, know when a member has passed away, and so therefore it's easier to identify the timing of the payment. Is it pre or post death, to determine the treatment? And you know, and I think it's just a key issue that people need to be mindful of.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, these are just some of the topics that we are going to be exploring through our upcoming SMSF Death Benefits Masterclass. We have our Cooper family. We've got multiple generations with a multiple number of funds that we will be progressively picking off people throughout the session. Funnily enough, for future events, they'll be coming back to life again, but it is
Most of them.
yeah, it is all part of helping professionals and our members to understand many of these different things as we work through these SMSF specialist topics like the payment of superannuation death benefits. So once again, if you want to find out more, you can visit our website, smartersmsf.com/events. We look forward to you joining us on the 18th of June for that SMSF Death Benefits Masterclass. Tim, I look forward to you being in person here as we present that masterclass together.
Yeah, can't wait to see you next week.
Excellent. Well, thank you all. Have a great rest of the week. Bye for now.
Bye.